StrayAllDay.com.
You are now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, one daily masterclass. Yes, you heard me, daily masterclass that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today we are getting into part 4 of 5, where we are talking the key, most important, must-have career soft skills that you must have and you must implement in your life. Or if you already have them, then you need to make sure you are being conscious about using them. So without further ado, if you haven't heard the first 3 episodes, make sure you go back to episode 1 so you get the explanation of what this is and why this is. And let's get right into our points. So now we are on point number, out of a total of 21, we are on number 13 here. And that is knowledge of human nature. This is still under the heading of social skills. And then after this, we'll get into methodical. So social skills, number 13, knowledge of human nature. Quote from Ionos: knowledge of human nature is a rather vague term. At its core, it describes the ability to assess people as correctly as possible based on certain indicators. Knowing a lot about human nature, you are more likely to achieve the desired result through your own actions. At the same time, you anticipate the actions and reactions of others very accurately. This ability is extremely practical in everyday life. Knowing a lot about human nature is particularly advantageous in professional fields where you work directly with customers, patients, or clients. So with this definition, first of all, when it comes to human nature, when it comes to understanding people and being able to read people and looking at people's actions and reactions and responses and energies, this is something that we talked about so many times here on this show, is just understanding, dealing with people and just building your people skills in general. We talked about this probably 60, 70 episodes here on this show. I told you just in episode number 1639, why negative people are how they are. Episode 1590, how to know people and be known. Number 1529, how to talk to people with whom you disagree. Not overestimating and estimating people. We talked about in episodes 1522 and 1520 respectively. I can't even list all the episodes where we talked about people and just the nature of people being who they are, but there are some very important distinctions that we need to lay out under this heading right here. So first of all, going back through, actually before I even go back through, first of all, let me lay this out while it's on my mind. Right now in the world, especially in the United States, I don't know what's going on in other countries, but especially in the United States, we have this whole cancel culture thing going on. And I just did an episode on cancel culture not too long ago where we talked about how everything, people are just getting crossed out for something that they did. Episode 1755, just a couple weeks ago. There was a woman who worked for Teen Vogue, or she was about to start working for Teen Vogue as the head editor-in-chief, black woman at that. And it came out that 10 years ago, when she was a teenager, she had posted some anti-Asian type of tweets. Something she said that was kind of like a jokey type of thing. She was 16, 17 years old when she said it. Something that a dumb teenager would say. If we had access to Twitter, when I was a teen, people in my generation, we would have did the same thing. But we didn't have Twitter, so none of our stuff is documented. But all of you can get canceled for your stuff. She basically stepped down, but it was obviously under pressure because of these tweets that she had put out 10 years ago that happened to be saying stuff about some dumb Asian teacher's assistant or something that didn't give her the grades that she wanted, et cetera, et cetera. And this happened right after the shooting that happened in Atlanta, where a man had shot up 3 different spas and a bunch of the victims were Asians. So obviously in that moment, and this was like within 24 hours of those Asian people losing their lives, now people are just looking for anybody who said anything negative about Asians and digging that up to get people canceled. And this happened to a black person. We thought black people were uncancelable. Obviously they were not. And the reason I'm bringing that up is to say this, because one of the big things that came up when this shooting occurred and everyone's talking about it was people somehow, some way trying to label this as maybe it was or not even maybe, there were no maybes in this. People saying, well, it was a hate crime, and they're saying, well, we got to band together to fight against white supremacy because the shooter was a white guy. Well, according to him, and he's the only one who would really know, And he only said it to the police officers. He didn't actually speak himself, the shooter. He was saying that his reasoning, according to the police, his reasoning was because he had a porn addiction, and he saw in his twisted mind was this is a way to help eliminate that porn addiction, was to shoot up people in these places that I guess he found himself going so often. Now, I'm not justifying what he did, nor am I defending him or what he did. However, we can't just jump to the conclusion that it's white supremacy because the shooter happened to be white. Because what if the shooter is black? Is it black supremacy? And we can't call it a hate crime because according to him, it wasn't because he hated Asian people. He was just shooting whoever happened to be in there, and the people in there happened to be Asian. And as I've told you, and I've written articles about this as well, sometimes the truth in life is not so sensational. Most of the time, the truth is not as sensational as the news headlines and the media posts are going to have you believe. The reason why news headlines and media posts are always so sensational, claiming to be able to read other people's minds, and that's why we're talking about this right here, is that it gets you excited, it keeps you anxious, it keeps you emotional. Usually anger and fear, those are the things that drive you to watch and click and read, and that's how they make their money. That's the business that they're in, which is why I told you not too long ago to stop watching the news back in episode number 1474. Do not watch the news because they're not actually giving you real information. They're giving you the sensationalized headline to keep you excited, which keeps you listening, which keeps them making money. Saying all that to say this, under this heading of knowledge of human nature, jumping to a conclusion about what's going through another person's mind based on their action is not knowledge of human nature. I shall repeat what I just said. Jumping to a conclusion about what another person is thinking based on the action that they took does not constitute knowledge of human nature. In other words, when a white person does something with which you disagree, whether no matter what race you are, we can't automatically say, well, they did it because of white supremacy. It doesn't make any sense because you would have to, first of all, be able to read that person's mind. Unless they have admitted that this is how they feel, then we can't jump to that conclusion. Now, can we look at context clues and try to piece together a puzzle and piece together a picture of a person based on their consistent actions? Yes, we can. But we can't jump to conclusions just based on one circumstantial piece of evidence because it fits the narrative that you already have in your mind. So knowledge of human nature means looking at other people dispassionately, stepping outside of yourself and looking at them as they are, not looking at them as you are. And I want to make sure we're really clear on this point because this is why they said in the very first sentence here, knowledge of human nature is a rather vague term. They are 100% right. It is very vague. And these days what's happening is people are kind of taking advantage of that vagueness by deciding to paint whatever picture they want to paint of any other person, especially a person with whom they disagree, and try to make that person look as bad as possible based on, well, you took this action, so you must be thinking this way, or you must feel this way, or we can draw this conclusion about you as a human being. And we used to be able to laugh these things off and call these people ridiculous, but nowadays we call them news anchors, now we call them politicians, now we call them professors, now we're calling them the mom and dad. Maybe you're looking at yourself in the mirror. So is getting kind of out of hand when it comes to the knowledge of human nature. So I want to make sure I'm drawing these distinctions and make sure you understand the details of this, that jumping to conclusions about what other people's thoughts are does not constitute knowledge. Now, there's a book called The Laws of Human Nature written by Robert Greene who will help clear up some of this vagueness about human nature. And I would definitely suggest you go read that book if you haven't read it already. If you have read it already, read it again. But as the Ionos is saying here, what they emphasize is knowledge of human nature is your ability to assess people as correctly as possible based on certain indicators. Now, again, that's another vague definition, which they already admitted to their vagueness here at the very beginning of this heading. Assess people correctly. So this word is a very relative term. What makes something correct? I mean, these days we can't even agree on science or facts or truth, let alone can we agree what's correct. So assessing people correctly, this is the definition I'm going to give you, is you looking at people objectively. In other words, not painting other people based on your emotions, whether that's an emotion of somebody you like or an emotion of someone you dislike. And this one requires a high level of self-discipline, which many people do not have, especially when we get into any type of emotionally charged topic. Because when people are emotional about a subject, especially something that stirs up dislike or anger or fear, people are not able to think objectively at all because they immediately want to label something a certain way because it fits, fits the story that they already had in their mind. Now, at the same time, according to Ionos, Anticipating the actions and reactions of other people very accurately. Now, this is one you can measure. You can anticipate what you think another person is going to do or how they're going to respond to something. And you can then look back, debriefing after the fact, and ask yourself, okay, was I correct? Did I correctly predict what this person was going to do? Did I correctly predict how this person was going to respond? And if you were accurate, then you need to figure out why you were accurate. And if you were incorrect, and you are mature enough to admit that you were incorrect, you need to figure out why you were incorrect. Where did you make an assumption that was incorrect? What assumptions did you make, and what were those assumptions based on? Were they based on things that you actually observed, or were they based on things that you were already thinking and you wanted to observe but they didn't actually happen? Now again, this requires a high level of self-discipline for you to be able to look in the mirror and say, I was wrong about this. Just talking to yourself, I was wrong about this, and here's why I was wrong, and here's where I need to make adjustments moving forward. Now, how many people listening to me right now do I honestly think have the maturity to be able to do that, especially with someone or something that you already have a negative projection about? I would say less than 10%, probably less than 5%. I'm being generous. So maybe about 3 to 4% of people listening to me right now will have the maturity to do this. Now, it doesn't mean you can't grow into it, but from what I've seen, what I see on the internet, what I see on social media, what I hear people writing about, and these are paid journalists, these are politicians who got elected, and the things that they're saying, I don't have a lot of hope for, at least for right now. My hope can change. My hope levels are subject to change. So as it continues to say, this ability is extremely practical in everyday life. They're 100% right about that. It's extremely practical and useful when you use it correctly. It is, or let's say more accurately and objectively. I don't want to use the word correct, too subjective. And it's extremely destructive and retroactive when you use it the wrong way. The wrong way being, again, putting a thought into the mind of another person based on your prejudices about them and how they think, or about their group or any group that they may belong to. Knowing a lot about human nature is advantageous in the professional world because you will be working directly with what? Human beings. So that's all of us. If you have an audience, you're working with humans. If you sell products direct to consumer, you're working with humans. If you sell business to business, you're still working with humans. Because guess who works at those businesses? Humans. When you deal with patients, when you deal with clients, you are always dealing with human beings. So your ability to read other people and understand other people, what they do and why they do it, will serve you in myriad ways in the professional world. Doesn't even matter what you do. The author that I would most suggest, actually there's a few that I would suggest for you on this subject. Robert Greene would be number one. He's written The 48 Laws of Power, my favorite book, The Laws of Human Nature, 33 Strategies of War, The Art of Seduction, The 50th Law. All of these are about human nature. All his books are about human nature and why humans are the way that they are. So I would definitely suggest Robert Greene highly. I would also suggest you read Seneca, who writes about Stoicism, the concept of Stoicism, which is, if I was to put it in a nutshell, is being able to look at life dispassionately and as objectively as possible with your emotions removed. I would suggest Ryan Holiday, who's written many books on the subject of Stoicism. I guess more the modern Stoic would be Ryan Holiday, and I may think of a couple others in a moment. But those are the top three that I would have you start with. Moving on to what number are we on now? Number 14. We are again talking the top 21 must-have soft skills that you need in your career moving forward. Number 14 is being a team player. Now, any of my athletes or people involved in sports who are listening to this, you understand the value of being a team player. Those of you who are in business, if there's more than one person who works with you, you understand that teamwork makes the dream work, as they say. Quote from Ionos, quote, "Working in a team is the main feature of many workplaces. As a team player, you can deal with dividing tasks, group communication, authority, and many other aspects that are important when working with other people. It is easy for you to get involved. The ability to work in a team also requires you to make profitable use of other social skills. People who are able to work in a team usually carry a wide range of soft skills that will help them in every workplace. In the modern world of work, the ability to work in a team is one of the most frequently desired skills for which applicants are consciously tested." As we just talked about, knowledge of human nature. This applies not only when you're dealing with strangers and random people on the internet, but also with the people that are sitting to the left and to the right of you in your office, with the people that you're coordinating with in Slack or you're on a Zoom call with all the time, the people who are on your actual team. You got to be able to work with those people, because if there's dissension on the inside, then your team is never going to do as well as it could do on the outside. We see this in the sports world all the time. How many championships with Kobe and Shaq have won had they been able to stay together. And if those two could get along, then the Lakers would have figured it out with everybody else. They might have won more championships. But when the team has dissension on the inside, no matter how great they are on the outside, they will never be as good as they could be. And working with the team, again, in any workplace, there's probably some kind of team being involved. So what can teams do? Here's the emphasis that they give. Dividing tasks. In other words, everybody knowing their role. We talked about being a role player here on this show, episode number 1173. Everyone is a role player. Episode 891, how to assume a leadership role in anything that you do. Episode 834, knowing and accepting your role in sports, business, and life. That's what dividing tasks means. Everybody knowing what their job is and accepting and embracing the role that they have been given. Whether that's maybe a little bit more than they're used to or a little bit less, everybody has to play a role. Group communication. We've talked about communication on the show probably 100 different times. Your communication skills are the key to you moving ahead career-wise. Any career, any industry. If you lack communication skills, you will not get ahead because people will have no idea what you're thinking and what you're able to do if you can't communicate it. Authority. Respecting the authority of the person in charge. Respecting the authority of other people on your team. Even if you have more than them, they have to have authority in something, because if they don't have any, then what's the purpose of them being on the team? What are they bringing to the table? It's easy to get involved when you are a team player, meaning you can step in and you can fill a role. This is something that I liked to always say about myself when I was playing basketball, is that any team you put me on, I can find a way to contribute to that team. Now, there are some players that I knew, played with, and played against. They can only play on certain types of teams. There are some players I knew they can only play on a team if they could have the ball all the time and dribble around, because if they didn't have the ball in their hands, they were completely useless. They'd basically you might as well replace them with an orange cone on the court, because they don't move or do anything if they don't have the ball in their hands. There are players who didn't play defense. So basically, they played half the game. When they were on offense, they were engaged on defense. They might as well put another orange cone there because they weren't going to do anything. There are players who could only play a certain way. They can only play with certain types of players. They can only play if the ball was going through them. They can only play if the team was winning, whatever. There are certain players who can only fit into certain dimensions of the game. And if they weren't in that particular situation, they weren't really useful. I was the type of player who, again, maybe I'm just tooting my own horn or puffing myself up. Maybe I'm remembering myself better than I actually was, but I think I'm accurate here, is that any team that I got on, I could contribute. So that team needed somebody to score, I'll score. They need inside, outside, scoring or shooting, I would do that. They need defense, rebounding, I could do that. I would try to find a way to contribute to any team that I was involved in. That's what a good team player does. Even though they may have one or two or three things that they like doing, their pet things they do, maybe that team doesn't need it. The team you get on doesn't need those things. Can you find another way to contribute, or do you become completely useless? Any of you athletes who's on a team right now, you find yourself not playing or participating as much as you would like to, maybe this is the reason. You haven't found a way to make yourself valuable to the team, because maybe the things that you enjoy doing, maybe somebody else already has that role and they're better at it than you. Maybe they're just better than you at scoring. Or you like to score all the points, but there's somebody on the team who's a better scorer than you. So who are you now, since we don't need a scorer? Can you find another way to contribute? Do you bring anything else to the table besides that? Because if you don't, then you may never get in the game. You might not even be on the team next year. So good team players always find a way to get involved and contribute in a positive manner. So are you a good team player or are you not? The ability to work in a team, according to Ionos, requires you to make profitable use of other social skills. That is a social skill, what I just laid out. All right, is there somebody on the team who's just better than you at certain things? All right, so now that you're not going to be the dominant one on that, I mean, if you go play for the Chicago Bulls in the 90s, you're not going to be the leading scorer. All right, they already got somebody for that. What are you going to do? Are you good at anything else? People who are able to work in a team usually carry a wide range of soft skills that will help them in every workplace. Good team players have most of the soft skills that we are talking about here in this series. So if you find yourself missing any of these soft skills, that is probably a clue into why you have failed on many of the teams you've been a part of. Not that you failed in having skills, is that you failed in being a contributing member of that team because you lack these soft skills. In the modern world of work, working in a team is one of the most frequently desired skills because things are so fluid these days. So how much team player ability do you have? Episode 1702. I told you about, if you want team success, you got to have everybody in the right role. And everyone has to embrace that role. Episode 1591, why you need a team around you. Episode 1388, why to fill your team with 8 players. Episode 557, how to inspire your team with energy as a leader. Episode 439, how to find out what your team is made of. Episode 374, how to lead your team. How to lead your team verbally. So all those episodes please refer to so you can learn more about being a team player and leading a team. And understanding when you're the leader of a team, you still have a role. Or the leading scorer on a basketball team, that is a role, scoring points. Because if you don't do that, the team's probably not going to win. So even when you're the star, you still have a role. I want everyone to understand that. Even when you're the coach, coaching is a role. Because if nobody's coaching, nobody's calling the timeouts, nobody sets the lineup, nobody decides who gets in the game, who comes out of the game, you might have all kinds of chaos going on with that team. No one's organizing everything. Every position is a role. Everybody has a role. From the announcer to the person mopping the floors to the assistants who hand out the water bottles during the timeouts. Everybody has a role. The person in the mail room at a company, the CEO is a role, the secretary is a role, everybody, the salesperson has a role. Everybody has a role. So if you don't know your role, you need to find out what it is. And if everyone on the team doesn't know their role, then you need to stop everything you're doing and get clear on everyone's role before you move forward. There's a story that was told in 2014 when LeBron James had just finished playing for the Miami Heat for 4 years. He came back to play for the Cleveland Cavaliers, his hometown team, even though he's from Akron, but the closest thing. He's playing for the Cavs, and the Cavs were in a practice early in training camp, his first year back with the Cavs. And LeBron, during practice, he asked the coach if he could pause practice and speak to the team, address the team personally himself. And the coach said, yeah, you can address the team. So LeBron calls all the players back into the locker room. All the players go into the locker room, and LeBron goes around the locker room to every player in the locker room, and he starts telling each one of them, here's your role. You need to do this. You, Kyrie, you need to do this. Kevin Love, this is going to be your role. I don't even know who else was on the team. All these other players, this is your role. You, this is your role. You, this is your role. And he goes right around the room and tells every player on the team what their role is for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, LeBron had the cachet to be able to do this. Not every player on every sports team should be doing this. All right, most players probably shouldn't do this, but LeBron had it. He had won a couple championships. He was the clearly best player in the NBA at that time. Some may even still consider him to be. And he had earned the right to be able to do this. And he went around the room and told everybody in there what he, LeBron, needed them, the players, to do for them to be a championship team. And damn it, he was right. They went to the NBA Finals every year that he was back with Cleveland. Won it one time. What is everybody's role on your team? Any team you're a part of. I don't care if it's just two people. What is everyone's role? If you're married, what are the roles of everybody in that family? Every good team, everyone knows their role. Moving on, point number 15. We are talking to 21 must-have soft skills for your career moving forward. Number 15, interaction ability. Quotes from Ionos. This is the way you interact with people. There are people who often joke and thus create a relaxed atmosphere, but who sometimes run the risk of not being taken seriously. On the other hand, there are people who act very seriously in the workplace and attach great importance to goal-oriented communication. They look professional, but could also come across as boring. A, quote, good, close quote, style of interaction is being in the middle of this spectrum. You should appear competent and reliable without being considered boring or uptight. Your interacting style influences your effect on other people to a large extent, close quote. Interaction ability is just your people skills. And we can just put it in the layman's terms. What are your people skills? How can you get along with other people? What is your ability to read the room? This is the key right here. That's basically what they're telling you. Your ability to read the room. Because they say some people joke around too much and then people can't take them seriously. And then some people don't joke around at all. They're so serious that people don't know how to be around them and they're boring and uptight and everyone's walking on eggshells around that individual. And then they say a good way is to be kind of in the middle of that. You don't want to be smack in the middle. You want to find, you need to find the mix between your actual personality, who you are as a human, because some people are a little bit more jovial and joke around a little bit more, and they're a little bit more fun-loving type of individuals, and some people are a little bit more serious. They're a little bit more stoic, they're less emotional, they're more dispassionate, and that's just how you are. That's just your nature as a human being. That's your character. So them saying that you want to be in the middle of the spectrum is actually incorrect. You want to be in the right mix in your spectrum, combined with your ability to read the room of the team that you're involved in. Now, there are some teams where everyone is kind of serious. That's kind of the nature of the team, and that's what works there. You need to adapt. You need to adjust. At the same time, you can add in a little bit of your flavor, and you can kind of shift the mood and the energy on that team slowly over time. You don't want to try to change it all in one day, but you can slowly over time shift the mood once you earn the trust of the people in the room. Again, this is your ability to read the room. Robert Greene talks about this in the 48 Laws of Power. He has a chapter that's called Preach the Need for Change, but Never Reform Too Much at Once. So yes, you can want things to be different, but don't try to change it all in one day, because people are going to push back against that. But if you change it all over the course of a year, people will gradually come around to it and not even realize that you changed everything, because you did it slowly day by day. This is your ability to read the room. Your ability to notice who are the people that you can joke around with and who are the people you probably shouldn't joke around with. Who are the people that you can, if you're a coach, I know I have a lot of coaches listen to this show. If you're a coach of a sports team, you should know which players on that team you can yell at in front of everybody, and they'll take it and they'll be fine and you won't destroy them. And which players, if you yell at them in front of everybody, you're not going to get a good performance out of them for 3 weeks. Maybe you might lose them completely. A good coach knows the difference between the two. A coach who is lacking in interaction ability just has their way. All right. There are some coaches who will just yell at all the players, doesn't even matter who it is, indiscriminately. I've had some coaches who did that, and they would lose people. They would just lose people mentally. Not that the player would disappear, but the player couldn't perform at their best because the coach didn't read the room, didn't understand which players to yell at and which players not to yell at, and then things just got out of hand, and that coach probably ended up fired. Phil Jackson, coach of the Chicago Bulls, during the Bulls' heyday in the 90s, talked about it. He said he never even yelled at Michael Jordan in front of everybody. Usually he didn't have to yell at Michael Jordan, but he would yell at other players, and he picked out his certain players. There were certain players on the team that he would always yell at because he knew those players would take it and those players would keep playing hard, whereas there were other players who might have been just as good, if not better than those, as back in the day they would call them the whipping boys. These are phrases that the coaches would use for the players that they knew they could get away with yelling at. And then there were other players, they would never yell at them. Even if the player was messing up, they wouldn't yell at him because they knew if they did, they would destroy that player mentally. And this is a thing. Everybody does not get treated equally, ladies and gentlemen. And any of you who is an athlete, you might not be able to hear this from your coach, even if your coach tried to tell you, maybe they didn't, but I'll tell it to you. This is the way it is supposed to go. So if your coach is always yelling at you, it's not because you're always messing up. It's because the coach sees you as someone who they can use as a sounding board. They're trying to get a message to one of your teammates, but they say it to you because they know they can't say it to your teammate because they can't take it, but they know you can. So you should actually take it as a compliment, believe it or not. But you personally, as an individual, no matter what team you're a part of, sports, business, coaching, family, whatever, is knowing what your nature is as a human being. Know who you are as a person. Get that part out of the way first, and some people do not. But once you know who you are as a person, read the room, get a feel for the energies of the other people, and then you adjust yourself based on who you're dealing with and how you're dealing with them. In the sales world, they used to call it, I don't know if they still do, they call it being a chameleon. What does a chameleon do? Chameleons change their colors. If a chameleon's on a wood tree bark, they'll change their colors to match the tree so they don't get seen by predators. If they're on leaves and they change their colors to become green so the predators can't catch them and eat them, that's what being a chameleon is. They change their colors based on the room that they're in, based on the energy of that room so that they can survive in the space that they're in. This is just called adjusting yourself. This is called playing the game, ladies and gentlemen. This is not being fake. This is called playing the game. We talked about playing the game in episode 13, 14. This is what hustlers do. Hustlers learn how to play the game. You learn what the game is and you play it. I told you when I was in college, I realized that I didn't really care about what was going on in the classroom. And I'm not telling any student athletes who listen to this right now that you need to do this, but I'm keeping it real with you. I didn't really care what was going on in the classroom, but at the same time, I wanted to get my degree. And at the same time, I knew I needed to be academically eligible, i.e. get certain grades in order to play sports. So what was the hustle? The hustle was I had to play the game. And the game was I still needed to go to class. I still needed to pretend to be attentive in many times that I wasn't. And I still needed to do enough of the work that I could pass the classes and stay eligible. That was the game. Even though I didn't really care about what the teachers were teaching, because I saw the internet was going to be the internet. I knew that was going to be my thing, and they weren't teaching about that. But the hustle was I had to play the game anyway. And sometimes in life, you just got to play the game. In episode 1210, I told you, don't complain, play the game. Don't be mad that you have to go to school in order to be academically eligible to play sports in the NCAA universities. Don't complain about it. Just play the game. All right, this is what hustlers do. Whiners and losers complain about the game, and then they end up losing the game because they spend more time complaining than they did learning the angles of the hustle. So your interaction ability is part of your hustle, is knowing how to talk to what person, what way. Not everyone does not respond to the same stimulus with the same response. And it's your job to know who's who and what's what. If you mess that up, you have no one to blame but yourself. Moving on to point number 16. Now we are in methodical skills. Okay, so there are 3 categories of skills here for those of you who do not remember. 3 categories of soft skills that are covered in this series. We went over personal skills. We just finished social skills. That was the last one of the social skills, was interaction ability. And the last one is methodical skills. Now, when we talk about the last of that, social skills, which was the interaction ability, I have many episodes of this show where we talk communication, so I want to give a few of those to you. Episode 1399, working on your non-verbal communication game. Episode 1264, 3 communication skills that you must master ASAP. Episode 1257, investing in your communication skills. And episode 766, the 7 biggest business communication mistakes that people make. Make sure you avail yourself of all of those episodes as we move on. Now we're in the category of methodical skills. Now, before I get into the first of the methodical skills, I am going to, and this is the last one we're going to do today, I'm going to read the explanation of this category from the Ionos website before we get into it. All right, quote, "This category comes closest to hard skills because methodological skills often manifest in practical expertise. However, these skills are not so easy to demonstrate since they are often the basic prerequisite for acquiring verifiable hard skills. For example, the soft skill presentation skills is an essential basis for the hard skill of being able to operate PowerPoint, while problem-solving competence is necessary for learning programming language. Methodical competencies, in other words, something like stress resistance, often overlap with personal skills, things like resilience. Nevertheless, methodical skills belong in a separate category because they not only cover the personal spectrum, but also support and even define much more direct professional skills." Close quote. All right, now let me break this down, and I want to put it in more practical, easy to understand terms. What they're saying here is that this category of skills that we're about to go through, the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 skills that we're going to deal with here, these methodical skills, these are basically the prerequisites that you need in order to acquire verifiable hard skills. So for example, to make this even more simple, the hard skill of being able to make a layup in basketball, or even just play basketball, period, the prerequisite skill would be having some form of athletic ability. You got to have some level of athletic ability. You're going to try out for a college basketball team. Right? Everyone understand what I'm saying? You got to have some level of cardiovascular capacity if you're going to try to win a 10K race or a half marathon, or even complete a 5K in under 30 minutes, something like that. So methodical skills are basically prerequisites that lay the groundwork for the hard skills that you're going to develop. So as they said, if you have a soft skill called presentation skill, you are the person who has an ability to present, whether presenting meaning talking to somebody, whether it means doing a podcast, doing a live presentation on a stage, giving a TED talk, giving a slide presentation. The presentation skill is a foundational ability. On top of that, you can build what? You can learn how to do PowerPoint. Maybe you can give a TED talk. Maybe you can run a 2-hour workshop. Maybe you can teach a training at some corporate institution. So the presentation skill is just the foundation. It's just laying the foundation, and then you can build on top of it. So if you have, for example, 0 athletic ability, you probably will not become a basketball, football, soccer, or hockey player because you don't have the foundational ability to build on. Everybody understand what I'm saying here? So this is the category that we're about to get into, methodical skills. These are your foundations. On top of these, you can build other skills that are more hard and more definable and more tangible. All that being said, let's get into point number 16. This will be the last point today. This is the first of the methodical skills, and it is called analytical skills. And definition, quote, "Analysis means uncovering the mechanisms behind complex facts and breaking them down into their most important components. Your analytical skills make you a precise observer who puts the knowledge gained into practice in order to constantly help yourself, your method, and your team improve. Especially when it comes to failures, it's important to use your analytical skills because this is the only way you can learn from them. A certain degree of self-reflection and communication skills will help you tremendously. Close quote. Analytical skills, everybody, is your ability to think critically. Look at a situation, ask the right questions, which we just talked about not too long ago here on the show. Is asking the right questions are more important than having the right answers. A lot of times in life, people are looking for answers when what they actually need to be doing is looking for the right questions. In episode number 1494, I told you how to ask a better question. In episode number 1741, I told you why asking the right question is more important than having the right answer. So many people are looking for the answers when what they actually need to do is looking for the questions. That is an analytical skill. Is knowing which question to ask is an analytical skill. Most people don't have it, so they just accept any answer that they're given because it seems like an answer to the question. But if you're asking the wrong question, who cares what the answer is? So analysis from Ionos, it says, uncovering the mechanisms behind complex facts and breaking them down into their most important components. This is a really important sentence right here. I'm going to say it one more time and I'll explain it. Uncovering the mechanisms behind complex facts and breaking them down into their most important components. In other words, if you didn't read between the lines of what this guy said, I'm going to read between the lines for you. Listen very closely to what I'm about to tell you. Just because, especially in the world we're in today, just because someone presents something to you and it is factually true does not mean it is the whole story. I'm pausing there to give you a second to let that sink in. And I want to say it one more time. Just because someone presents a fact to you that is factually correct, it is factually accurate, 100%, does not mean it is the whole story. If you can internalize the point that I just made, it will change the way that you look at every article you read, every tweet that comes up in your feed, everything that you hear from damn near everybody you hear it from, including myself. If you just internalize that very statement right there. Just because it is factual does not mean it's the truth. Those are two different things. And analytical skills is how you start determining this. Just because something's a fact, now your job, once you get the fact, is breaking down the fact into its most important components. It's just because something did happen doesn't mean they're telling you everything that happened. They're telling you one part of it. So analytical skills make you a precise observer. What's a precise observer do? They think and listen twice and speak once. And this is how you help yourself. This is how you help your tactics and you help the people around you. Especially when it comes to when you fail. When things are not working in your favor, oftentimes what happens when something's not working for someone, they start asking themselves all the wrong questions. Then they get the right answers to the wrong questions. And then they go implement those right answers and they still keep failing. Why are they failing? Not because they got the wrong answers. Not because the person who helped you didn't really help you. No, they answered exactly what you asked them. But if you ask the wrong question, it doesn't matter what answers you get. So you understand why analytical skills matter so much? And this is why so many people hit failure after failure after failure. They keep banging their head into a wall because they're asking the wrong questions, because they lack analytical skills. Now, you can get help with this. People can help you with this, but you got to be, first of all, willing to be helped, and secondly, you got to be seeking in order to find. And as they said at the end here, a certain degree of self-reflection and communication will help you tremendously. Because if you can't communicate what the failure is, and you can't communicate what answers are not helping you and what questions might help you, if you can't communicate that to yourself, let alone to anybody else, how are you ever going to get the questions? How are you ever going to find the right questions that you actually need? Well, it's a trick question. You won't. And this requires a certain degree of self-reflection. So when things are not working in your favor in any aspect of your life, the first thing you need to do when you have strong analytical skills, instead of blaming another person or blaming some abstract thing that must be against you, such as the system, so to speak, instead of doing that, which is a cop-out and it gives you no responsibility whatsoever, and when you have no responsibility, you also have no power. So if you don't want to strip yourself of power, don't blame other people or situations or systems for your circumstances. The first thing you need to do is analyze yourself and ask yourself some good questions like, what am I missing? What am I not doing? What am I not seeing? What questions am I not answering? What am I pretending to be unaware of, but I really should be paying attention to? Where am I weak? Where am I failing? Notice what all these questions do? They all empower you to do something about a situation. And if you're not asking yourself these kind of questions, that's probably a clue as to why you keep hitting your head up against the same wall over and over again. How do I know that? All that said, I gave you a couple episodes already about asking yourself the right question, because this is literally the key to changing the actions that you take and making a quantitative change in your life rather than a qualitative one. Episode 1059, the loser's question is, what should I do? It's not a good question because you might be doing something towards the wrong ends. So you need a better question first. Episode number 1030, why you need to be challenged, questioned, and pushed. And again, that doesn't have to come directly from you. This is where you go find a mentor. This is where you go find a coach. This is why you read books. This is why you listen to a podcast like this one that may challenge your thinking on certain things. The reason why you need to be challenged, questioned, and pushed is so that you can stop going down the same grooved patterns of thinking. Unless you are exactly where you want to be in life, asking the wrong questions is going to keep you in the same spot. So if you want to go to a different place, you got to ask yourself a different set of questions. And you may not be qualified to come up with those questions, but somebody out there is, if you're willing to ask or willing to hear them share those questions with you and then adopt them and then use them. And then hold yourself responsible for answering them. Episode 791, when you're questioning yourself, here's what you do. Episode 640, stop asking little bitch ass questions. Episode number 610, if you're still asking questions, you ain't ready. And that's a performance-based topic. Episode number 523, your game is not in question, but your will is in question. I'll just leave you with those for now. All that said, we're going to stop at that point here, and tomorrow we will be going into point 5, final points, final episode in this series of the 21 must-have career soft skills. The 4 that we went over here today: number 13, knowledge of human nature; number 14, being a team player; number 15, interaction ability. Now going into methodical skills; number 16, analytical skills. Everybody, if you have not, I keep forgetting to say this at the beginning, I won't forget tomorrow, send me a text and let me know what was the most valuable resource, most valuable nugget you got from today's episode. My text number is 305-384-6894. Once again, 305-384-6894. Tell me the most valuable thing you got from this episode here today, and work on your game. Dre all day.